Hello and welcome to today's episode of Platinum Talks Wealth. Emmy-nominated journalist Jennifer Rogers Markwell changed gears in her television career when she realized the need to help women make sense of investing. She regularly hosts educational workshops to empower women and others to take charge of their financial future. Now, join your host, Platinum Wealth Management President Jennifer Rogers Markwell, as she leads us into the world of money memories, money infidelities, and how these can mold our relationship with our personal finances as adults. Let's dive into today's episode.
Hi, it's Jennifer Rogers Markwell, and you're joining us on the Platinum Talks Wealth podcast. Today, I'm joined by Jacqui Brauman. Jacqui, thank you so much for making time.
Thank you. I'm very excited.
Yeah, me too. Well, tell me all about you and why you do what you do.
Well, you can probably tell I'm from Australia and I run a law firm in Australia. So I've been a lawyer for nearly 20 years, run a law firm for a decade. And, you know, I've practiced in a lot of areas. I've then dived down and specialized in wills and estates and succession planning. And, you know, I've had that career quite successfully as a lawyer, but on the flip side of that, I've also seen some horrible things, and I see people struggle to, you know, find justice and get somewhere within the system that we have as well. And it's not fulfilling. So my other passion project is my business, Legally Wise Women, as well, where I'm trying to help women be more educated with their legal literacy. There's some stats out there that says up to 83% of women, when they face a legal challenge, don't get professional advice at all. And that is just such a huge stat. And so I started thinking about, well, why that is. And a lot of it is to do with fear and lack of confidence, and a lot of conditioning that we have as women. And you know, the fear is sometimes around what it might cost or how people might judge them or shame that they got themselves into this mess, which is, you know, not at all how it's perceived from, you know, the resolution side, but that's how we as women perceive it. So I really want to increase legal literacy, and that involves having people actually understand as a consumer how to engage the legal industry, what to expect, understanding how to find the right lawyer, understanding how lawyers charge, and then also having a little bit more empowerment around negotiating for themselves, actually managing the engagement with the lawyer as well, instead of the lawyer sort of taking over and project managing when it's your life. And, you know, lawyers do have a bit of a conflict of interest in managing your matter, particularly if they're paid by the hour, because of course they don't want it to resolve. You know, they want it to be prolonged, not necessarily, you know, a lot of lawyers are out there who want to do the best for you, but that's the business model, unfortunately. And then also there's a whole part around intention setting, because so many people come into a legal challenge expecting the worst and coming in really emotionally damaged sometimes, particularly if it's a challenge with a family member, because you know, there can be some vindictiveness, some punishment, there can be all sorts of underlying emotional things there. And it's really also about trying to set a future focus, and instead of punishing someone for all the things that have gone wrong, if you come to it with the right intention, often there's a whole lot more ease in being able to come to a resolution. So there you go. Long story short.
No, that's fascinating because, I mean, so I'm a financial advisor, wealth planner, right? So for me, it's really educating on the financial literacy, but the legal literacy, that's, I mean, obviously just as important too. But I mean, when like you and I were talking back and forth, that's the first time I've heard legal literacy.
Yeah, I know it's not really out there. And I think lawyers generally have sort of tried to keep their knowledge to themselves. It's sort of, knowledge is power, and you hold me up on a pedestal because I know all this stuff. But, I think we're in the age of consumerism. And I think that particularly, with financial services, with medical services, we're all happy to get second opinions. Why not with a lawyer? And we should seek out the right person to work with us, and we should understand. And if someone's not serving well, we should go elsewhere. Like, we don't have to put up with someone who is arrogant and gets back to us in their own good time instead of actually serving us. So, I think times are changing.
So, question for you. How did you get on this path? So my husband is also an attorney, right? And he said he became an attorney because he didn't like attorneys, but he wanted to know what attorneys knew. So funny enough, right? But how did you get on this path?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I sometimes say that if life was a game, then lawyers know the rules of the game. So it is a fairly powerful sort of place to sit sometimes. But no, I got into law, A, mainly because I did well enough in school to get in. B, because I was a bit of an angry teenager and sort of had this social justice drive within me. So I did want to go and help people, and I did want to make a difference. And then you slowly become more cynical and chipped away because you actually can't. You're stuck within a system as well. And there are so much better ways to do it. But by the time people often come to a lawyer, it's way too late. And so I am trying to get to people earlier so that they get advice earlier, so that they don't put their head in the sand, so that we can resolve things before they escalate and get out of control.
You're hosting online classes. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, how do you get to people to educate them, I guess? And so podcasting's one way, which is amazing. Don't we all love having people in our ears all the time? And I think webinars are really important. So yeah, a free webinar every month just to try and get the information out in front of people. I, do a lot of Instagram Live. So that's done once a week. So, there's all these little places where I'm just trying to drip out as much information as possible. And also to have a safe and credible first place for a woman to land when they are worried about a legal challenge. Because, when you think about a woman who has a legal challenge, A, they either keep it to themselves for a while because they're too ashamed, or they go to friends and family. And unfortunately, friends and family often aren't the most resourceful people either. They're also biased. And although they will have your best intention in mind, in their view, their experience is not enough. And the other place women go is just to some of these, huge Facebook groups, sometimes a business women's Facebook group, or all these things. And just the horrendous things that I see that people ask in those groups, and then the pile-on of people, talking about their horror stories. It's not good for your focus, your mental state, to hear other people's horror stories, let alone the poor direction that you might be given as well. So
no, I commend you for what you're doing, for sure. And I tease, like, same in my world, right? Like, somebody's like, oh, I got some financial advice from my brother. I'm like, oh, what's your brother do? He's a plumber. Well, that's fantastic. And I'm sure he's the best plumber on the planet, right? But like, I'm not giving plumbing advice, right? Like, that's totally a different ballgame. And in your world, much like mine of finance, like, it's a bro show. It's a male dominated environment. So I commend you for really educating and pushing literacy and sharing it with other women to empower.
Yeah, I think that's a good point you make as well. It's a bit of a bro show. Although it's interesting that there's more women now graduating from law than men. And there's more women in the lower job roles in law than men, but the upper sort of roles are definitely male. But I also see when females come into the legal industry, because it is so male, or has traditionally been so male dominated, that we all sort of get conditioned to be a particular way, which is very masculine. And so even though there are more and more women coming into law, they're still behaving in a very masculine aggressive sort of way. And so even that needs to start being challenged internally within the system.
I think it depends on the individual, the communication style, and who you resonate with. I'm sure on your side and on mine as well. Like, I think the relationship is so incredibly important, because is this someone that you're going to pick up the phone and ask a question to, or are you uncomfortable doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. And you might be working with someone intensely for months and months. In your space, in financial, of course, it's a much longer sort of relationship, you would hope, over time. But certainly with legal, it's highly emotional and intense for, quite a particular period of time. So yeah, you do want someone that you have in your corner.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate that greatly. So another thing we talk about on the podcast is money memories. What's a money memory that you had as a child or a younger person that helped mold your relationship to money as an adult?
Well, it's your parents that really create most of your money memories as a child. And my parents went through a really hard financial period when I was in that crucial development phase. And so I remember a lot of being frugal, like a lot of not wasting anything at all, and a lot of reusing, recycling, a lot of making things from scratch and doing things from home and being really, really resourceful, like stretching things as far as you can, which is great on one hand, because I am also super resourceful, but I also don't want to be stingy. So I'm really aware of that as well. But also I do remember another period of time sort of later in my teenage years where, again, sort of shopping with my mum, and they were back in a better financial position by then, but then it was starting to get almost to this overspending sort of situation.
You are listening to the Platinum Talks Wealth Podcast.
Hey, it's Jennifer. I wanted to take a quick break to remind you that you are worthy to have a seat at the table when it comes to money and your finances. We, both me and my team at Platinum Wealth Management, want to meet you where you are, whether you're starting out, starting over, or have been investing for years. Reach out to us at platinumwealth.net or call us at 775-717-0001. We'd be honored to help.
And now, back to the podcast.
And I remember going shopping with her to restrain her from buying all these unnecessary things all of a sudden, because it was affordable again. So, and particularly, she was worried about her weight at the time. And I was like, well, why are you buying all this stuff? Because if it's in the house, you're going to eat it, So it's funny, those memories, aren't they? Because they're interrelated with, weight and identity and image, and even being frugal. It's also, I cringe a little bit because often I had homemade clothes, and so that was also part of my identity. It was a little bit like I wasn't quite the same as the other kids.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Another thing that kind of goes hand in hand is financial infidelities. And that can mean obviously different things to different people. What's a financial infidelity that you've experienced or that you've witnessed that you think folks could learn from?
I think in business, it's been quite interesting in terms of, just also gauging what other people find their value as, and meeting KPIs and things like that. I actually had a really horrendous experience a little over a year ago when I did bring someone into my business, and we had all these grand plans, as you do, of growth, and it quickly became apparent that this other person couldn't do what she said she was going to do, couldn't meet her KPIs, and then became very defensive about it. To reach our goals and to even make it break even, she had to promise that she would bring in a certain amount of work, and quite quickly it became apparent that she couldn't. And then so my part of the business was supporting a couple of staff members on her side, and she didn't have enough for those staff members at all. And then back on my side of the business, we were all working to support these other people, and it starts creating these resentments and, people not doing what they say they're going to do. And I suppose it was a lesson for me for not calling it out early enough or being straight enough about it. I thought I was being super straight. Like we said, we had all these spreadsheets and all these things that said, to get this cash flow, we need this amount of matters. So you need to be going out and getting this amount of matters in this type of matter. And then each month we would go, well, you're 15 short this month. And then the next month, like you're 12 short. And so, but I wasn't actually, I suppose, talking through the consequences. And so I've taken some of that responsibility on myself too, but it was certainly still a huge lesson that, people are quite readily also just to have you prop them up.
Yeah. And that's not fair to you or the business at that point, right? So if you're not being impeccable with your word, which it sounds like that case she wasn't, like that affects everyone. And then it's a domino effect because your team is trying to rally and lift where they can to make up for that.
Yeah, that's right. It was a huge stressful moment. And then, of course, the undoing of that as well. And me talking about a legal challenge.
Oh, gosh.
There you go. So, yes,
Yikes.
12 months down the track.
Oh, gosh. Well, again, and hopefully, again, people can learn from that too in their own experiences and maybe being, over communicating. I tease with my team. I'd rather over communicate and have the same conversation multiple times to make sure that we're always on the same page. Granted, it's not perfect, right? Having a team is not always perfect. There's always things that happen. That's just part of life. But I'm sure that either people love it or they don't. I'd rather, like I said, have the conversation multiple times and over communicate than get something lost in translation along the way. But I'm a work in progress.
Aren't we all? And
Yeah.
we all beat ourselves up as well as leaders, don't we? That we're, not quite getting it right, that we're inadequate here or inadequate there. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's where grace comes in, I think. A little grace.
Yes.
Well, as we start to wrap the conversation, one thing I like to ask is what are tips and or tricks that you use to utilize money differently in your own household?
So there's this bit of a wave through Australia, and I think it's known a little bit internationally as well with the barefoot investor here. And so, a lot of us read the book and sort of adopted a lot of his systems. And so I very much have bucket accounts, and I have those buckets over different banks as well, so that I'm sometimes forgetting about those buckets where I'm saving because it just is an automatic transaction that moves from my primary operating account into these other buckets, and the other buckets are in another bank. So I don't see them when I log into my operating account where I pay all my bills and things like that. And my operating account also moves a certain amount of funds every week over to a bill account as well, so that, I always have enough for my bills and things like that. So that's been a really great system to use. And the other thing that we have in Australia, which I don't think you have in the States, I mean, you have a version of it with your 401ks, I understand, but we've got compulsory super here in Australia where employers have to pay 12% of your wage into a superannuation account that you can't touch until you're 67. So that is a really great initiative that we have with the government here. And quite a lot of those superannuation funds also have a life insurance component automatically built in. So it's quite interesting how people then, again, just forget about that, but it's a great piece of savings. It's often their biggest asset. But as a business owner, I can pay in extra and make it a business deduction. So I also do that. So extra $25,000 a year goes into my super, which is just such a relief for my future.
Well, thank you so much for making time and sharing today.
Nice to be here and to talk to you.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. And then hopefully those of you watching or listening will join us on the next Platinum Talks Wealth podcast.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, Platinum Talks Wealth, please subscribe and share. For more information about Jennifer Rogers Markwell or Platinum Wealth Management, please visit www.platinumwealth.net. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member of FINRA and SIPC. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. The guest speakers and their companies are not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial or Platinum Wealth Management.